She laughed at me while I was in the room. I was standing 10 feet away, by the fridge, looking for the leftover chili, when I heard her say it. That dry, performative chuckle she uses when she's trying to impress someone. "He's like wallpaper," she said. "Always there, but you stop seeing it." She paused, then added, almost sing-song, "Brian, though, Brian makes me feel alive. Like, alive. The way she dragged the word out, like she was tasting it. Then silence. Just her pacing in the hallway, phone pressed to her cheek like it was a lifeline, and me standing there holding a half-empty Tupperware container in my hand, the lid trembling just a little. She didn't know I was home early. Traffic was lighter than usual and I didn't text. Habitually predictable Mitchell. The guy who texts on my way, and then shows up exactly 36 minutes later. The guy who fills the bird feeder every other morning, even though he hates birds. The guy who pays the property taxes a month early just to get it out of the way. The guy she stopped noticing. I stood there for another minute, waiting for the rest of the conversation. Waiting for her to pull it back. To say she was joking. That I was dependable. That she loved me. Something. Anything. What I got instead was this. "I think sometimes he wants to be invisible. Like, maybe he thinks that's love. Being quiet enough so you don't bother anyone." I put the chili back in the fridge. That night I didn't say a word. I didn't ask who Brian was. I didn't press her about the call. I lay next to her in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling fan blade I'd been meaning to replace for 3 years. Her head rested against the pillow like nothing happened. She wore that silk eye mask she got for her birthday last year, the one I wrapped in gold paper and gave her with a dumb smile. She said it was thoughtful. Said I always remembered the small things. I used to think that mattered. I lay there while she drifted off. I counted the slow breaths, felt the rustle of the sheets every time she shifted. Imagined how her body would arch if Brian touched her in the dark. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I got up, went downstairs, sat in the garage for an hour, just watching the water heater hum. No rage, no tears, just a kind of stillness, heavy and absolute. Like being buried alive under 1,000 to-do lists and half-hearted kisses. It wasn't new, it was just the first time I admitted to myself I'd been dying in slow motion for years. That's the thing about being wallpaper. Eventually, you realize the only one left looking is you. By the way, if you've made it this far, and you're the kind of person who actually listens to these stories all the way through, subscribe. Seriously, over 97% of people don't, and we pour everything into this. So if you're one of the few who notices what most overlook, hit that button. It means more than you know. Back upstairs. She turned in her sleep and muttered something I couldn't make out. I went to the office, opened the locked drawer in the bottom cabinet. Inside was a folder I hadn't touched in over a year. Bank records, old passwords, signed copies of documents I never mailed. I logged into the joint account and transferred the entire balance into her name. Every last cent. I updated the autopay on the mortgage, linked it to her account. I removed my name from the utilities. Made a list of all the places where my name still lingered, phone plan, insurance, even the damn gym membership, and began the process of erasing myself from every one of them. It wasn't hard. It just took a calm hand and attention to detail. The same skills she used to praise me for. "You're so steady," she used to say. "Like a rock." The dog stirred around 4 a.m. He padded down the stairs, sat next to me, looked up with those stupid eyes, patted his head. He'd stay. She loved him more than me. Anyway, at 5:15 I took a shower. Wore cologne for the first time in months. Packed one bag, couple shirts, tools, some old ID I'd kept from a temp job back in '09. Left the wedding ring in the freezer, buried in the bag of frozen peas. By 5:58 I was in the truck. I didn't look back at the house. Not once. No note. No fight. No voice raised. Just silence. And the growing hum of a man choosing to vanish. She woke up to birdsong and silence. The spot next to her in bed was cold. Undisturbed. No imprint. No scent. She assumed he'd gotten up early for one of his walks. The ones she always rolled her eyes at, the mind-clearing strolls he insisted helped him think. First, she didn't even notice anything off. Just the absence of a coffee cup on the counter. A dry sink. A strange stillness. The kind that doesn't hum. It hovers. She called out once casually. "Mitchell." Nothing. It wasn't until she walked into the closet that the world tilted. His side, his perfectly aligned, obsessively neat side, was empty. Not messy. Not ransacked. Empty. as if someone had vacuum-sealed the space where he once lived. Hangers swinging slightly, shelves cleared. A single sock rolled in the back corner like a forgotten warning. She stared at it for a full minute before whispering, "What the hell?" Downstairs, the house looked normal. Shoes by the door. Keys on the rack. Mail stacked in its usual pile. Only, the stack had been sorted. Bills, ads, junk. Her name paperclipped on each. Even the water bill. She flipped it open. His name had been removed. She opened the junk drawer. Nothing. The files from the filing cabinet? All gone. The insurance binder? Still there, but the policy had been updated. She was now the sole owner of the house, the cars, and apparently the IRA account she'd forgotten they even had. She called his phone. Straight to voicemail. Still, she didn't panic, not at first. Mitchell was predictable. He didn't do drama. Maybe this was some passive-aggressive stunt. Some grand gesture to prove how overlooked he felt. She was annoyed more than anything. She left a message. "Mitchell, if this is about that stupid phone call, grow up. We've been married 20 years. You don't get to ghost me like some sullen teenager." Then she tried to log into the joint account. It was still active, but only her name remained. The balance sat there, untouched. Not a single cent withdrawn. Credit cards? Deactivated. Only hers worked. His had been closed the night before. She didn't remember hearing the keyboard. Didn't remember hearing anything. She called her sister. Her sister called it a break. Her best friend said it was probably a midlife crisis. Her mother, as usual, blamed his job. "He always worked too much. I said that man would snap one day. But it wasn't a snap. It was the softest cut possible. No blood, just absence." By noon, she was in her lawyer's office trying to figure out what she was even entitled to. That's when the unease kicked in. "Well," the lawyer said, tilting his head as he read through the records, "it looks like you own everything. The house, the vehicles, the stocks. He transferred them all to you 2 days ago." "Transferred?" she repeated. "Why would he?" "No idea. But it's all notarized. Clean. Legit. No signs of coercion." He even included a post-transfer affidavit stating that he acted freely and voluntarily. She stared at the papers like they were in another language. "So he gave me everything and vanished?" "Looks that way. You're not in any legal jeopardy, if that's what you're worried about. But I've honestly never seen anything this tidy." That's when she filed the missing person report. The officer asked the usual questions. "Was there a fight?" "No." "Any history of mental illness?" "No." "Drug use? Gambling? Affairs?" She blinked. "No." But in her gut, something flickered. They pulled his driver's license records. No recent activity. No travel. No credit checks. His phone remained inactive. His social media hadn't been touched. His email bounced back. The security cameras at the grocery store showed him leaving in his truck. Calm. Alone. Nothing in the passenger seat. That was the last anyone saw of him. By the third day, she stopped answering friends' calls. On day 5, she was combing through their wedding photos like they held a clue. Day 7, she found the ring in the freezer, nestled beside the peas. For some reason, that broke her. Not because of the gesture itself, but because of how precise it was. Mitchell had never once misplaced a thing in his life. If the ring was there, it was intentional. And still no note. No answer. Just this echo of a man who had vanished without taking anything but himself. The police followed protocol, of course. They asked the neighbors, checked hospitals, ran facial recognition on traffic cameras across 3 states. Nothing. One officer leaned in and whispered, like it was a secret, "Honestly, we've seen this before. Guys who just disappear. They prep for months. No paper trail. They go full ghost. Leaves you wondering if you ever really knew them." She wanted to punch him in the mouth. Instead, she went home, stared at the empty side of the closet, and began to realize something she hadn't fully accepted until now. He didn't run from something. He ran toward something. And whatever it was, it didn't include her. At first, she turned it into content. Of course she did. 3 days after I disappeared, she posted a selfie with our dog, captioned, "When your husband takes silent treatment to Olympic levels." Face with tears of joy, #where is Mitchell, #midlife crisis much. The comments flooded in just like she wanted. At first, they played along. "Maybe he finally got sick of your burnt coffee. Bet he's camping with Bigfoot." One guy wrote, If I had to listen to Diane talk about her CrossFit coworker one more time, I'd fake my own death too. That one got over 1,300 likes. Then came the second post. A clip from our wedding video, badly cropped, slapped with a TikTok sound about disappearing husbands, and captioned, POV, you marry wallpaper. Now even the walls are gone. Smug smirk, faux sad face at the end. Filters, hashtags, a crying emoji that wasn't remotely convincing. But social media's a funny thing, because after the laughing came the questions. Then the digging. Wait, you actually filmed him when he didn't know? Hold up, you called him wallpaper? To his face. Is this real, or just content farming? And then, the comment that broke the tone entirely, he's actually missing, isn't he? That one sat unanswered for hours. Then came 10 more like it. The day after, a local gossip account posted about a missing person report. Attached was a blurry photo of me at a gas station 2 towns over. Timestamped the morning I left. The caption. Anyone seen Mitchell? Wife says he vanished. No fight. Just gone. Kinda chilling, right? She didn't post that day. Instead, she walked around the house with the phone glued to her hand, waiting for it to light up. She called my old coworkers, texted my high school friends, even emailed one of my college professors I hadn't seen in 20 years. Just trying to piece together his mindset, she said in the email. Any insights appreciated. All she got back was a canned reply. Sorry to hear. No contact in years. Hope you find him. That night, she made a story of herself drinking wine alone. Fake casual, with our wedding photo blurred in the background. Subtle, calculated. But again, comments weren't playing along. This isn't quirky. This is weird. Why would you joke about a missing person? You sure he didn't leave on purpose? She replied to one. He's just sulking. Mitchell does this. He vanishes emotionally. This time it's literal. She added a winky face. That night her phone rang. The cops. They asked if she'd filed the missing person report. She had. Of course she had. Day 2, right after the lawyer confirmed everything had been legally transferred. She thought it made her look responsible. Like a worried wife. Like she hadn't been publicly joking about his vanishing act like it was a skit. The officer asked if she'd heard anything since. Any contact. Even a burner phone call. She said no. Then he said something she hadn't expected. Well, your husband's social security number just deregistered from all active utilities. No phone, no power accounts, no vehicle registration. Whoever he is now legally. It's not Mitchell. She laughed awkwardly. Wait, what do you mean? Like, he changed his name. The officer paused. We can't say for certain, but it looks like he's taken steps to unperson himself. Purposefully. Systematically. Okay, but you can find him, right? I mean, he couldn't have just... Ma'am, the officer cut in. You're the one who said there was no fight, that he left you everything, that there was no indication of foul play. So unless you can provide something that suggests otherwise, he let the sentence dangle. She hung up and stared into space for a long time. That night, she finally opened the closet and realized how precise the exit had been. Not just the missing clothes, not just the cleaned-out drawers, but the strange, surgical neatness of it all. It didn't feel emotional, felt prepared, like something planned down to the hour. She sat on the floor and opened one of the drawers I always kept locked. Empty, except for one thing, a manual, how to disappear completely, a guide to reinventing yourself in the digital age. She flipped through it like it was a joke. But my handwriting was in the margins. Notes, circled sections, even a highlighted line. The most successful disappearances are invisible by design. The people left behind should never know if it was escape or rebirth. She dropped it, literally flung it across the room. Suddenly, the silence wasn't passive anymore. It wasn't Mitchell sulking. It was Mitchell erasing. And for the first time, the guilt that she'd pretended to brush off, the wallpaper joke, the years of boredom, the side glances at other men, crept up like smoke under a locked door. She wasn't in control of the narrative anymore, because the man she thought was too boring to leave just rewrote the entire story without her. By week 2, the facade started to chip. Not crack, just chip. Megan always thought in aesthetic terms, even under pressure. She applied makeup like armor and posted in pastel tones with captions that read like forced diary entries. But there was no longer a script she could follow for this. No influencer toolkit for my husband disappeared and left me with a perfectly legal empire I can't emotionally spin. So she did what people like Megan do when control slips. She hired someone else to handle it. A private investigator named Vince Gellard. Ex-cop. Thick mustache. Business card with a cartoon magnifying glass and a tagline that said, "You vanish. I find." He found my last footprint within 72 hours. A blurry security cam still. Me at a gas station near the border of New Mexico and Texas, wearing an old flannel, ball cap low, filling up an unfamiliar truck. License plate unreadable. Purchase? $43.16 in gas. $9.75 for trail mix, water, and duct tape. Why duct tape? She asked, panicked. Vince shrugged. Could be anything. Could be fixing a leaky cooler. Or a trunk, she muttered. He ignored her. They checked the truck. No rental agencies had it on record. Likely cash. Possibly a private sale. No traceable Vince. She paid him to run background checks on every truck purchase in a 5-county radius. Nothing. No hits on facial recognition, no flagged hotel receipts, no traffic cams past that last gas station. Then the theory post started. On Reddit, Twitter, and forums with names like missing but not forgotten and voluntary vanishings. One user wrote, "Guy probably planned this for a year. Clean break. You don't just remove yourself from digital existence without dry runs." Another, "Did she cheat? This has he heard something he wasn't supposed to written all over it." The tide was turning, and not in her favor. Megan did what she always did when the narrative got uncomfortable. She flipped it. She posted a close-up, red-eyed, raw, holding one of my flannel shirts like it was a relic. "I know we joked a lot," she said, voice trembling just enough to pass as sincere. "But Mitchell, wherever you are, you're not alone. We love you. We miss you. If you're struggling with mental health, please come home. You matter. Hashtag come home Mitchell. Hashtag mental health matters. Hashtag not all who wander." She turned off the comments. But the internet never stays quiet for long. Someone stitched the video with her old TikTok. The wallpaper joke. The Brian makes me feel alive clip. They posted side by side. Caption. When your trauma was someone else's punchline. And then it all collapsed. Brand deals went quiet. 3 PR reps dropped her that week. One health supplement company released a statement. "We stand with families affected by emotional neglect and disappearance. Effective immediately. Our partnership with Megan Cole is suspended. She got death threats. And pity. A horrible cocktail that poisoned her algorithm." Her sister, Joanna, flew in from Denver. She's not built for social media. Doesn't do filters. Wears cardigans and means well. She tried to stage an intervention. "I just need to find him," Megan insisted, pacing barefoot across the kitchen, wine glass shaking. "If he saw me, he'd understand. We could talk. Fix it. He'd remember what we had." Joanna said gently, "Maybe that's the point. Maybe he did remember. And that's why he left." Silence. Then Megan screamed. Threw the glass across the room. It didn't shatter dramatically. Just bounced off the wall and rolled. A stupid, undignified thud. Later that night, Joanna went live on her own page. Just her face. No background music. No ring light. "If anyone knows where Mitchell is," she said softly, "just tell him, we don't need anything. We just want to know he's okay. Please. Mitch, if you're watching, call me. Just once. You don't have to talk to Megan. Just let us know you're safe." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. That part shook me more than anything, because I did see it. Somewhere in a motel room in Kansas, eating cold fries and staring at a dented mini fridge, I watched her face on a burner screen. I almost called. Almost. But then I remembered the drawer. The one I found 6 months earlier. The receipts. The birthday dinner she forgot to plan because of work stuff. Turns out she bought champagne and a single meal for 2 at a steakhouse 30 miles away. Brian's credit card charged the same night, same location. Same goddamn table. She wasn't careless. She was confident I'd never check. And that's what made it easy. I powered off the phone. Pulled the battery. Broke the SIM in half and flushed it. Threw the burner into a dumpster behind the gas station near Dodge City and kept driving west. Through the rain. Meanwhile, Megan posted one more time that night. A black screen. Caption. "If this is a breakdown, how long before it breaks me?" Funny thing about that question. She still thinks I'm broken, that I snapped, that I lost control. But she never saw the truth. I wasn't breaking. I was building. It's amazing how loud silence becomes when it stretches too long. By week 4, Megan was unraveling. Not in the dramatic, mascara-streaked, wine glass-shattering way she usually favored. This was different. Smaller, tighter, more internal, like a ticking under the skin. She stopped performing grief and started living in it. The followers thinned. Sponsors evaporated. Her inbox was no longer filled with collaboration offers, but with cold auto-responses, frozen payments, and one particularly blunt email from a mental health brand. We appreciate your transparency, but feel the situation is misaligned with our values. Wishing you healing. Translation, you're poison now. So she pivoted. Again. Only this time it wasn't performative. She started searching. The private investigator had gone cold 2 weeks in. Vince had tried. She paid well and her panic was compelling, but eventually even he had to admit what she couldn't accept. He covered his tracks too well. If he doesn't want to be found, you won't find him. Megan didn't like absolutes. She saw them as challenges. So she got in her car. She drove to my old office building in Midtown. Walked in like a ghost of herself. Sweats, sunglasses, hair pulled back like she didn't care. Asked the front desk if Mitchell Rowe still worked there. The receptionist blinked. Rowe? He resigned. Couple months ago. Resigned. Megan echoed, as if the word tasted foreign. Yeah, he gave notice. Very polite. Clean handover. Even brought donuts on his last day. Megan nodded, lips tight. Walked out, didn't speak until she reached the sidewalk. Donuts, she muttered. He brought donuts. She started calling my friends. One by one. The ones who used to sit with us at holiday dinners. The ones she used to mock for being boring like Mitchell. She assumed they'd be on her side. They weren't. One said, I haven't heard from him, sorry. Then hung up without waiting for her reply. Another replied by text. I think it's best you don't contact me again. He asked for space. Space. Even my childhood friend Kyle, who once cried into my shoulder during his divorce, stonewalled her. Whatever Mitch is doing, it's not impulsive. Let it be. She wasn't used to being shut out, especially not by people she saw as satellites in her orbit. The panic turned to obsession. She showed up at my mother's front porch. My mother didn't blink, didn't flinch, just stood in the doorway with a dish towel in one hand, and her eyes narrowed. Megan, please, Megan said. Just tell me he's alive. My mother studied her for a long moment. Then, with surgical calm, said, He's gone. That's not an answer, Megan snapped. It's the only one you're getting. Did he tell you to lie for him? Don't flatter yourself. I told him not to tell me. The door closed, the latch clicked, and Megan, for the first time in years, realized she'd underestimated the depth of people's loyalty to me. They weren't just protecting me. They were removing her. That's when the morgue started. She made a spreadsheet, checked local hospitals, discreetly called shelter hotlines under fake names, asked if there had been any John Does matching my height, age, features. She even checked burn units. Just in case, she told Joanna, who looked horrified. Megan, stop, her sister said. You sound unwell. I am unwell, Megan snapped. My husband disappeared and left me everything but a reason, Joanna whispered. Maybe that was the reason, but Megan didn't stop. Couldn't. She visited a shelter in Tucson after someone on a missing persons forum swore they saw a man who looked like a cleaned-up homeless Jesus buying socks at a truck stop. She flew out, showed the manager a photo of me from 2017. He shrugged. Could be. Could also be this guy who sleeps in the alley. Or my cousin. Everyone looks like someone. She cried in the parking lot for the first time. Real crying. Not live stream tears. No camera. Just her. Slumped behind the wheel of a rental Nissan. Wondering how someone so predictable could become untraceable. But I hadn't just vanished. I designed it. I deleted every fingerprint she could follow. Shredded every breadcrumb. Months before I left, I studied how identity dissolves. I learned which ATMs don't store video, which counties don't digitize vehicle titles. I found pockets of America that live in analog, where cash is king and names are optional. I spoke to no one unless they spoke to me first. I used flip phones with preloaded minutes. I paid in cash. I stayed in motels with physical keys and cameras that hadn't worked since 2004. I erased Mitchell Rowe like he was a chapter from someone else's life. To Megan, it looked like madness. To me, it was clarity, because there's a difference between running away and walking out with your head high and the doors locked behind you. She almost didn't see it. 3 years had passed. Enough time for Megan to shed the scandal, rebrand twice, and move into what she called her resilient era. Her online persona now leaned spiritual, burning sage, morning routines, trauma quotes paired with black and white selfies. She posted less, cried less, but smiled like she was trying to convince someone, maybe just herself, that she'd grown. She didn't talk about me anymore. Not publicly. Not to her audience. Not to her sponsors. Not even to the handful of friends who still lingered in her curated orbit. I had become the incident. A murky, unspeakable chapter she'd wrapped in cotton and buried under the brand. She never admitted it, but she'd stopped searching. Or at least stopped saying she was. So on that Tuesday afternoon in Boulder, when she ducked into a local bookstore during a rainstorm, the last thing she expected was to see me. She was flipping through an outdoors magazine at the checkout. One of those glossy regional publications with grainy photos of flannel men posing near wilderness cabins, dog-eared American flags, and recycled headlines like, "How One Man Brought Hope to Cold Country." She barely glanced at the cover. She was skimming. Then she saw it. Third page in. Half spread. A photo. 2 men lifting a stack of lumber. One wore a beanie. The other had a beard. Not long, not unkempt, just different. Neatly trimmed. Streaked with silver. Cheekbones sharper. Shoulders broader. Face leaner, almost hollow. The years had etched themselves into the corners of the eyes. But her breath caught. The magazine slipped from her fingers and landed open on the tiled floor. It was me, helping rebuild a veteran's shelter somewhere in Montana. I was turned slightly, mid-lift, eyes squinting against the wind. My name wasn't listed. No credit. Just a caption beneath the photo. Volunteers Hall reclaimed wood during the renovation of the Flathead County shelter. But it was me. Her knees bent without meaning to. She crouched, trembling hand gripping the page like it might vanish if she blinked. A cashier asked, "Ma'am, you okay?" She didn't answer, just kept staring at the image. The clothes were different. The posture was different. Even the eyes, they were colder, quieter. Like whatever had once made me familiar had been sanded down to raw purpose. But beneath it all, beneath the changed surface and the rural grit, it was still unmistakably Mitchell. 3 years gone. No calls. No letters. No trace. And now here. Alive. Not just alive but well. Building. Contributing. Laughing in a photo she didn't take. The idea shattered her. Not the proof of life but the ease of it. The way I'd clearly woven myself into a new world without her. Without effort. Like she had never existed. She snatched the magazine off the floor and ran to the counter. "Do you have back issues of this?" The cashier blinked. Yeah. In the bin by the window. Usually a month behind. "Want me to check for something?" "No," she said too quickly. "I'll look." She rifled through the bin. Found nothing. Nothing in the archives, nothing online. The magazine had no website, no social media, nothing traceable. Just a P.O. box in Missoula. She bought the copy and clutched it to her chest like it might dissolve in her arms. Drove home in silence. Didn't call anyone. Didn't post. Just sat at her kitchen table with the magazine under a reading lamp, studying every detail. The man in the photo had a scar along his left forearm. She remembered that scar. From when I slipped with a box cutter putting up the nursery shelves. The one she said made me look tough. Even though I nearly passed out. It was still there. Unmistakable. Undeniable. Still, she told herself, maybe it's not him. She said it out loud like a prayer. Like denial could rewind time and give her back her grip on the story. But it was me. And suddenly everything came back. The transfer of assets. The silence. The freezer ring. The surgical erasure. The intent. I hadn't vanished in weakness. I'd removed myself with precision. She stared at the photo until the colors blurred. Her face bathed in the dull light of the kitchen lamp, and for the first time in 3 years, she understood something that turned her stomach inside out. I wasn't missing. I was hiding in plain sight, in a life I'd built deliberately, surgically, and completely without her. And worse still, I looked at peace. The wind in Flathead County bites harder than memory. Sharp, honest, No filters. The kind of cold that peels away whatever illusion you're clinging to. Megan stood across the gravel road, wrapped in a coat too thin for Montana and hope too dense for reality. Her boots crunched softly as she shifted, staring at the cabin turn shelter like it was a holy sight. She'd been waiting there for 3 hours. Didn't go inside. Didn't ask anyone for help. Just stood like a scarecrow with no purpose but penance. She had the magazine folded in her back pocket, like she thought she might need proof. Then I stepped out. Lumber on my shoulder, sweat soaking through the collar of my flannel. The weight didn't bother me anymore. My hands were stronger now, rougher. I'd spent the last few years building something with my own damn hands. Not spreadsheets, not quarterly goals, but walls, roofs, food shelves, real things that didn't lie. The sun caught my eyes just as I saw her. For a second, I thought she was a hallucination, like the past had slipped through a crack in the sky and spilled her out, standing there with that old expression. Some cocktail of accusation and disbelief, like she'd been owed an ending. I paused. Time slowed. My arms burned from the weight of the boards. My pulse didn't even flinch. Then I kept walking, straight past her. She didn't speak until I'd taken 4 slow, deliberate steps toward the truck bed. Mitchell. My name cracked in her throat like a dropped plate. I stopped, turned. Her face. It hadn't aged as much as I'd expected. She still had that curated skin, the polished look of someone who micromanaged lighting even in real life. But there were fine lines around her mouth now. Worry lines. And her eyes, once so expertly blank in their performances, were now swimming. "How'd you survive?" she asked, the words stumbling out before she could think. It wasn't a dramatic plea. No tears yet. Just confusion. Oh, maybe a sliver of fear. I studied her. Not like a lover. Like an archaeologist examining a ruin. Her coat was designer. Her gloves too thin. Even now, she dressed for optics. I knew without asking she'd rehearsed this meeting. Pictured me falling into her arms. Or at least into her orbit again. Maybe a hug. Maybe forgiveness. Some kind of closure that would give her narrative back. I let the silence thicken. Let her stew in it. Then, finally, I said, "You taught me." Her lip trembled. "What?" I wiped the sweat from my brow with the back of my wrist, dropped the boards into the truck bed with a soft clunk, and turned fully to face her. "You taught me," I repeated, calm, icy, "how to disappear, how to stop needing someone who treats you like furniture, how to let go of shame and start over. I didn't survive in spite of you, Megan. I survived because of you." She looked like I'd slapped her. Don't say that like I wanted this." "No," I said. "You didn't want this. You just wanted less. Less of me, less effort, less truth. You got it." Her lips parted like she wanted to scream or run, but she did neither. She just stood there, blinking too fast, hands gripping each other so hard her knuckles whitened. "I looked for you," she said, voice breaking. "For years. I went to morgues. I checked burn units. She choked on the words. "I thought you might have been dead. I said. "To you." A pause. Then, "Why didn't you just say something? Leave a note? Give me a chance to fix it." "You don't fix a rotted foundation," I said. "You demolish it and start fresh. Somewhere else." Tears finally rolled. Quiet ones. No dramatics. I watched them fall without reaction. "You were always so quiet," she whispered. "I never knew what you were thinking." "That was the problem," I said. "You never asked." She nodded, dazed. Her eyes darted past me, scanning the shelter behind, the volunteers, the dogs barking near the kennels, the stacked crates of food and coats. She was trying to understand the man in front of her. The man she didn't make room for until he no longer needed her space. "You built all this?" she asked, barely audible. "Some of it," I said. "Most of it I just showed up for. That's the trick. Show up, shut up, work." Another gust of wind rolled through. She shivered. "I don't know what I thought I'd find," she murmured. "Maybe part of you still waiting." "Then you weren't looking for me," I said. "You were looking for the man who needed your approval." "And you're not him anymore?" she asked. I stepped closer, just one stride, and held her gaze. "No," I said. "I'm not." Then I turned and walked away. Not fast. Not angry. Just finished. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what she'd seen, and it terrified her, The quiet husband she left behind had become something far more dangerous. Free. She sent a message through the receptionist at the shelter. Handwritten, folded, no perfume. Just 3 words. Please, just talk. I told them to tell her I'd meet her, but not alone. That night, we sat across from each other at a booth, in a tired little roadside diner with flickering lights and a jukebox that hadn't played anything but static in years. It smelled like burnt bacon and old decisions. She wore the same coat as earlier, but with more care. Makeup reapplied. Lip gloss. Control. The illusion of it, anyway. Across from her sat my former attorney, Carl, sipping black coffee like it was church wine. He'd aged 2, less hair, more steel in the jaw, but he was the same quiet hammer he'd always been. Megan blinked at him, confused. Why is he here? I figured, I said, sliding into the booth. If we're going to have a conversation about the past, we might as well tell the whole story. She narrowed her eyes. You said this was to talk. It is, I said calmly. To talk about the parts you never saw. Or pretended not to. Carl cleared his throat, set down his coffee, and opened a worn manila folder. Inside were copies of documents with her signature on them. This, he said, tapping the top sheet, is the marital asset restructuring form you signed in February of 2019. You remember that day, Megan? We said it was for refinancing the mortgage to get a better rate. You were in a hurry. You didn't read the fine print. What is this? She asked, already leaning forward, heart pounding behind her eyes. That mortgage document, Carl continued, was actually a spousal asset separation agreement, legally filed under sealed trust conditions. You signed away your legal claim to the joint holdings, conditionally, of course. You were never supposed to lose anything unless a very specific clause was triggered. I sat back, watched her unravel. What clause? She whispered. Carl flipped a few pages, then held one up with a practiced flick. Clause 7C. Willful public humiliation or reputational damage of the spouse, in a manner that results in measurable emotional or economic harm. She stared at it like it was written in blood. You're kidding, she said, voice cracking. That's not real. That can't be real. I didn't. It's real, Carl said flatly. I drafted it. You signed it. And your little TikTok prank? That was the trigger. Laughing at your husband publicly. Suggesting he was weak, impotent, emotionally irrelevant. Then posting it to 500,000 people. Monetized. It was a joke, she spat. Carl didn't even blink. The law doesn't care if you meant to hit someone. It only cares that you pulled the trigger. She turned to me. Her face was red now, eyes wild. You planned this. You were waiting for me to screw up. I raised an eyebrow. No, I was hoping you wouldn't. But I'd already stopped betting on hope by then. She laughed, bitter and sharp. So all this disappearing act, the shelter, the beards and flannel and ghosting your wife, this was all just revenge? No, I said. It was protection. I gave you everything, years, loyalty, patience. You gave me wallpaper jokes and a carefully edited personality for strangers on the internet. I left because I realized something. You didn't love me. You loved the story of me. The one where I supported your spotlight and didn't cast a shadow. You didn't even fight, she said, voice rising. You just vanished like a coward. I leaned in, voice quiet and razor sharp. I didn't vanish. I outgrew. She stared at the papers again, flipping through them like maybe, just maybe, there was a loophole, some technicality. But no, every I was dotted, every T crossed. The trusts had been sealed months before she posted her viral Mitchell's So Boring clips. You were already preparing, she whispered. Yes, I said. She set the folder down, hands trembling. So what now? You're just done? You walk away and I'm left with nothing? Carl interjected, cool and practiced. Legally, you're left with what you signed for. Emotionally, that's between you and the ghost you made. Megan crumpled in on herself. Her posture collapsed. All that posturing, all those curated reactions. It drained out of her like air from a punctured raft. She covered her face, sucked in breath through her teeth. Then the sobs came. Raw, wet, inelegant. Not for the camera. Not for the comments. Just broken. I watched, not with joy, not with satisfaction, but with certainty. This wasn't punishment. This was the bill. 3 years ago, she'd laughed at me in a phone call, said I was wallpaper. Now, sitting in a booth lit by flickering fluorescent bulbs, she realized something far worse. The wallpaper had moved on, and it took the whole damn house with it. It started small, like most fires do. A podcast episode from a scrappy little independent show with too many ads and not enough polish. The host specialized in offbeat vanishings. Disappeared husbands, recluse millionaires, people who ghosted their entire lives like it was a performance art piece. One week she covered a guy who vanished into the Alaskan wilderness and lived in a shipping container full of novels and ferrets. The next, a man who faked his own death to get out of HOA meetings. But then she got a tip. An anonymous listener emailed with a link to Megan's viral Mitchell is wallpaper clip. Attached were threads from old forums, archived subreddit posts about my disappearance, blurry screenshots of the shelter photo, and even a few unlisted videos Megan had tried to scrub from the internet. The email subject line read, "The man who walked away perfectly." The host dug in. She reached out through a burner contact form I'd buried in a domain registry 2 years ago. I hadn't looked at it in months. Her message was simple. Not trying to expose you, just trying to tell it right. If you're open to it, I'll protect your anonymity. No visuals, no name, just a voice. I waited 3 days, then responded. She sent a mic. I recorded in a borrowed office behind the shelter, door locked, light off. My voice came out calmer than I expected. Quiet, steady, no anger left in it, just clarity. I didn't vanish to hurt anyone, I said. I vanished because I was already invisible. The day my wife laughed at me like I was a prop in a sitcom she starred in, something in me stopped asking for space. I realized I didn't want to be seen anymore. Not by her. Not in that version of myself. So I left. Not because I hated her, but because I finally respected myself enough to walk away. The host spliced my words over Megan's clips. The prank video. The crying follow-ups. Her talking head montage about how Mitchell always took everything too seriously. Then came my line. She used it to open and close the episode. When a man is shamed for sport, sometimes he leaves the stadium. It went live at midnight on a Thursday. By Friday morning, it had 200K plays. By Sunday, it trended number 3 on Spotify under Society and Culture. And by Tuesday, Megan's world cracked open like wet drywall. The flood came first in the comments. People dug up everything. The jokes. The hashtags. The wedding video clips she'd used for content. That smug little smirk she wore while painting me as the punchline. Screenshots from the podcast spread like wildfire. You don't fix a rotted foundation. You demolish it and start fresh. Memes, TikToks, stitches of her old content paired with my voice, soft and devastating. The quote, "He didn't vanish. He outgrew," trended on Twitter. Then came the sponsors. One by one, they dropped her like she was radioactive. While we appreciate her journey, we stand firmly against the emotional mockery of spouses and will not tolerate glorified humiliation. A yoga apparel brand announced they were reallocating her partnership funds to a nonprofit for domestic abuse survivors. Irony, I thought, has teeth. She posted a 10-minute video titled My Side, filmed in a bright room with gentle acoustic music. The comments were off. She didn't cry. She talked about pressure, about performance, about trauma responses and curated versions of ourselves. But without an apology, without humility, it fell flat. She ended it with, "He was never perfect. Neither was I. We both made mistakes. That made it worse. People don't like half confessions. They smell like rot." Someone stitched her video with a screen-recorded comment. "He gave you everything. You gave him hashtags." And then, someone else dug up the document. A heavily redacted version of the trust clause she'd signed. Clause 7C became legend. In comments, in YouTube breakdowns, even merch. Clause 7C hoodies. Clause 7C mugs. Clause 7CD my toxic ex became a trend. I didn't comment, didn't post, didn't share. Just watched from a borrowed laptop in a dim room, sipping coffee brewed too strong, listening to her empire sink beneath the same waves she once surfed with confidence. Carl sent me a single-line text the following week. Guess she finally found something that didn't trend. I didn't respond. I just looked out the window of my small Montana room. Bare walls, chipped dresser, real wood floors, and sat in the stillness. I'd never raised my voice. Not once. But now, the whole world had heard me. She arrived at dawn. No car selfies. No Instagram stories of mountain fog. No yoga pants with faux philosophical captions. Just Megan. Barefaced, brittle, wrapped in a navy wool coat she probably hadn't worn since before I vanished. Her hair was pulled back without precision. No mascara. Lips dry, cracked. She looked like someone who'd finally run out of lies to rehearse. I saw her through the window of the shelter's kitchen. I didn't react. Didn't move. Just watched her stand there on the gravel path, unmoving, clutching the strap of an old leather satchel like it was the only thing tethering her to earth. She waited. One of the volunteers came in, asked if I wanted them to tell her to leave. I shook my head. I stepped outside. The air was cold. Not cruel, just honest. The kind of cold that doesn't hide anything. Megan stood as I approached, but she didn't speak. Not at first. She just looked at me, eyes wide, lips trembling. She whispered, "Can we talk?" I said nothing. She swallowed, eyes glistening. No cameras. No audience. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. There's nothing to save. I know that now. I nodded once. Just enough to let her speak. "I lost everything," she said. "The sponsors. The audience. Even Joanna doesn't talk to me now. They all think I'm a monster." I waited. Still nothing from me. "I deserve that," she added, voice thinner. "I know." Silence. Then she took one shaky step forward, like she thought I might vanish again if she didn't say it quick. "But I have to ask. Please. One thing." Her voice cracked. She looked down, then back up, desperate. "How did you survive it all?" I stared at her for a long time. Not with anger. Not even pity. Just finality. The woman in front of me was not the one who'd laughed at my quiet routines, posted snide jokes at my expense, or stood with her friends while they rebranded me as a background prop. That woman was gone. This one had finally run out of mirrors. And so, calmly, quietly, I answered, "You ended." She blinked, confused at first. Then it hit her. Her knees buckled. Literally. As if the weight of it all, guilt, loss, the brutal clarity of hearing the truth laid bare in two simple words, finally crushed whatever scaffolding she had left. She collapsed onto the gravel, hands gripping her coat, sobs tearing out of her throat, raw and uncontrolled. Not performative. Not edited. Real. I didn't offer comfort. Didn't kneel beside her. Didn't tell her it was okay. Because it wasn't. And we both knew it. She had asked how I survived. And I had told her, "You ended. You, the mockery, the diminishing, the careless disregard. The version of you that needed to belittle me to feel taller. The woman who looked at a man giving her his everything and said, 'He's like wallpaper.' That ended. And so, finally, I lived. I turned and walked away. No speech. No last look. No poetic pause for effect. Just the sound of gravel under my boots as I stepped into the life I had built. One nail. One board. One silent act of self-respect at a time.